Mobile phones are bad for your health. It's a debate, with many well-argued pros and cons, that has raged for almost as long as the device has existed. And one that will no doubt continue until they are long since obsolete and the next technological wonder comes along to seduce mankind afresh. It's a question that may never fully be answered, unless you asked a certain out-of-favor lawyer if mobile phones are bad for you. Because, in the end, Tommy Whitaker's mobile phone would play a pivotal role in his ultimate downfall, in more ways than one. Firstly, it was the main reason he was still in his god-forsaken hotel room, when by any measure of common sense he should have been well away from the place the instant Bill Fraker had left. And he would have been to were it not for his precious mobile phone's all but empty battery. It was so close to dying that he had to keep it plugged into the wall socket while he was booking his ticket out of this mess. Tommy paced the threadbare carpet of his room, as best the wire to his charger would allow, and cursed out loud as he was put on hold for the umpteenth time as he desperately tried to book a plane ticket out of England. And with luck to safety. "Sorry sir," the thick Scottish accented kid on the other end said as he came back off hold. "But where did you want to fly to again?" "Anywhere," Whitaker snapped. "Spain, France, Italy. Christ, Timbuktu for all I care." We have an early morning flight available to Crete? I heard it's very nice, even at this time of year." "Great, book that." Whitaker balanced the phone between his cheek and shoulder as he fumbled in his jacket pocket, which was hanging on the back of a chair, for his credit card. "Do you require insurance, sir?" the kid asked helpfully. That almost made Whitaker laugh out loud. He doubted a budget airline provided the sort of insurance he needed right now. "No," he told the call center drone on the other end, finally finding his credit card. "Return?" the kid asked. "Christ no. I'll just get you our best price, sir. Please hold." "No. Shit." The kid was gone, replaced by what sounded vaguely like Vivaldi but played on a child's Bontempi home organ. Whitaker could almost hear the composer turning in his grave. "Fuck it." He cursed and eyed his beloved credit card, his life-saver. He had no friends left and even less hope. But one thing he would always have was money. Money didn't give a shit who was after you, didn't care what was in it for itself. It just was. Bucket. Loads of the stuff floating around in the virtual world of online banking, just numbers really with pound signs in front, they were all he had left. And so be it. Now that he had the makings of a plan, Whitaker allowed himself to believe he might just get out of all this with his balls intact. The near-suicidal gloom that had descended over him, brought on by that fat bastard Fraker's visit, was starting to lift little by little, and he could see a future, dim for sure, but getting brighter, starting to shine through. Jesus, who knows, he might actually live long enough to spend some of his only friend money on something other than a desperate escape. He idly wondered, as Vivaldi deformed twin droned on, if they needed any lawyers in Crete. That was when the phone went dead. Shit. What the fuck? At first he thought he must have pulled out the charger wire with all his pacing, but it was still intact. He lamely shook the phone and pressed the on button again, but nothing happened. Fuck it. He glanced around. The room's light was still on, so that ruled out a power cut. He tried the button again. His hand was so slick with sweat the phone nearly slipped out of his grasp. He wiped it on his trouser leg and pushed the on button once more. This time he kept it pressed. Come on, come on. The phone was obscenely expensive, but it could still be temperamental, especially when the battery was low. Yes. Whitaker let out a cry of relief as the display lit up. It had a full signal again and 1 bar on the battery meter. That was good enough. He pulled the wire out and grabbed his jacket. 1 bar was more than enough power to phone back the call center robot and book that flight to Crete, and now he didn't need to do it from this dungeon. He was about to hit the redial button when there were 3 heavy knocks on the door. Whitaker spun and faced the door and just managed to stifle the cry that was escaping his mouth by literally clasping his hand over it. He held his breath and listened. Had Fraker returned? And if so, was he alone? Silence, but for his heart hammering 10 to the dozen in his ears. Whitaker slowly brought his hand away from his mouth, but only when he was sure he wouldn't just scream involuntarily despite himself. That was when he realized he could see his own breath misting in front of him when he exhaled. The room had been cold at the best of times, but the temperature seemed to be dropping second by second. The sweat on his face turned to a thin layer of ice on his skin. Jesus, the word came out in a cloud. As he stood there shivering. Bang, bang, bang. 3 more impossibly loud knocks on the door, shattering the frozen silence. This time Whitaker cried out loud before he had a chance to smother the noise. Oh, Jesus, oh Jesus, oh, Jesus. The room was so cold now he half expected the moisture in the air to turn to snow. Outside in the corridor Randall smiled to himself. Israel however didn't see the funny side at all. Oh Randall, for pity's sake, won't you just smash the door in and get on with this? Randall had his palms pressed against the paint-chipped wood of the door. It was a simple enough trick to suck all the heat out of the room, but Israel's bleeding in his ear broke his concentration. The collector pulled his hand away in frustration. Israel. He rubbed his hands together, they were tingling from the power still surging through them. Well, I don't see why you don't just get on with it, the demon complained. You really are a vacuous little turd. Randall turned to look at where Israel was floating. As a reward for following Fraker and leading them here, Randall had let the creature keep its preferred form, that of a shapeless heat haze-type distortion which floated at head height when it wasn't skulking around his feet. A rare moment of charity he was already beginning to regret. Where's your sense of style? He asked, but it was a pointless question and one he already knew the answer to. I don't follow you. I don't follow you, Israel duly echoed, nothing if not predictable. Randall turned back to the door, he could feel the waves of fear from inside radiating through the wood and it felt like sunshine on his face. He knew Israel was incapable of such subtleties of feeling, but he didn't care. Moments like this, moments to savor, were lost on the demon. And Israel hated him for it. Which was a bonus. Randall leant forward slightly and closing his eyes he rested his forehead on the door, letting the fear wash over him. Randall, said Israel. Tut, okay, Randall said testily and stepped back, the moment now well and truly ruined. But in truth, Israel was right. Tommy Whitaker was only a stepping stone, nothing more. He hammered on the door 3 more times. Tommy Whitaker, he said in his best imposing voice of doom tone. Open this door. He wasn't 100% sure, but Randall thought he heard a whimper from the other side. Either way the fear was fair flooding through now. Inside Whitaker's knees buckled and before he knew what had happened, he was on the floor. He curled himself up into the fetal position and covered his face with his hands, like a child trying to hide from the boogie. Man. In a futile if I can't see you, you can't see me gesture. He lay there, shivering from cold and fear in equal measure when the boogeyman outside spoke again. Open the door, Tommy. I won't ask again. The boogeyman was angry and it knew his name. Whitaker dumbly shook his head no, and silently prayed for it to go away. But tonight God wasn't listening to Tommy Whitaker. He had been a bad boy, and now it was time to pay. The door exploded, silently, like all the sound had been sucked from the room along with the heat, but with the force of a hand grenade showering the room with 1,000 splinters. Outside Randall counted to 10, for dramatic effect, then stepped inside. Or don't, he said, entering and almost ruined a perfectly good entrance by nearly tripping over the prone lawyer. He looked down at him. Come on Tommy, get up, huh? Whitaker was gasping for breath, his grubby white shirt was flecked with dozens of tiny drops of blood from where the shards of door had hit him. They bloomed as the blood seeped through the material. He didn't know it, but he was lucky he had been on the floor when the door exploded and not in the direct path of the blast. The tiny wooden projectiles would have surely taken his sight at the very least, along with most of the flesh from his face. Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. Was all he could muster in way of response to Randall. That was until he uncurled himself and then let out a scream of pain. Here. Let me help you. Randall grabbed his collar and unceremoniously dragged Whitaker to his feet, causing him to let out quite an impressive scream, especially from one so obviously exhausted. Still gasping, Whitaker looked up at Randall in dismay, as if only now realizing he was actually there and not some phantom of his fear-addled imagination. "Oh, God," he choked out. "It's all true." "Fryad so buddy," Randall replied, and without thinking dusted Whitaker off, causing the wounded man to wince violently. His legs threatened to give out, so Randall grabbed his arms to keep him upright. "Shit, sorry about that," Randall winced in sympathy, seeing the pain on Whitaker's face. "That wasn't such a good idea." He gingerly let go of Whitaker's arms after he was sure he wouldn't just keel over. The lawyer swayed slightly but at least stayed on his feet. "It's all true," Whitaker repeated. His face was a mask of pain. "All of it," Randall stated. "But by the look of you, you knew that already." Whitaker nodded forlornly. Then his face suddenly straightened, as if a self-preservation switch had just clicked on in his brain. "Randall, wait," he licked his chapped lips, searching for the right words. "I gave Fraker McCulloch's number. That's all I have." Then he actually held up his right hand, palm out. "I swear." "On your life?" Randall asked melodramatically. "God, yes," Whitaker replied, nodding like an idiot. "Truth is, Tom, the number on its own isn't any good to me." How could he put this? "I need someone with a personal connection to McCulloch to make the call. That's how we trace him." It was the truth. Israel could follow the signal, but only if it was laced with emotion. Hate, fear worked best, but something more than just a radio signal. After all, they weren't the CIA. That emotional connection between the two ends would enable Israel to surf the ether from Whitaker and nail McCulloch's location. "Sharks," Whitaker said somewhat obliquely. "Huh?" It took Randall a moment, but then he got the ripples analogy. "That's right," he said brightly. "Ripples. All I need is for you to call him. I have a colleague who can follow the ripples right to McCulloch. Then you can go." Whitaker looked sullen. "I don't believe you." Israel buzzed in Randall's ear. "He's not as stupid as he looks." "Hush now," Randall said, still looking at Whitaker. "Huh? Not you." Whitaker let out a slow breath and straightened himself up as best he could. The motion obviously pained him, but he bit back any reaction in his face. "Will it be quick?" he asked, looking Randall firmly in the eyes. "What? The call or your death?" he asked flatly. The bluntness of the reply made Whitaker wince ever so slightly, more of a twitch of the eye than anything, barely noticeable really, especially considering the subject matter and his hopeless situation. The man was struggling to keep what dignity he had left, and much to Randall's admiration he was managing to do just that. He must have been quite something in his prime, Randall mused. "Stop toying with him," Israel interrupted. "He knows you are going to kill him. I can smell it on him." It was true, they both knew clear as day only Randall would be walking out of this room. "Make the call," Randall said, softening his tone. "After that I'll send you on your way. And yes, it will be quick." Tears filled Whitaker's eyes and he nodded. The truth was, despite Whitaker's newfound courage, Randall really wanted to make him suffer for all the running around he had made him do. But again, as Israel had put it, Whitaker was little more than a stepping stone to McCulloch. Larry McCulloch, now he was a different matter entirely. That particular meeting, when it finally came, wouldn't be pretty at all. Randall would get extra points for making him suffer. "Will I?" Whitaker's voice broke for a second. He tried to clear his throat before continuing. "Will I go?" It was no good, he just couldn't finish the sentence. "To hell?" Randall finished the sentence for him. For a moment it looked to Randall like Whitaker was finally going to break down into the quivering mass of hysteria he had been trying so hard to keep at bay these past few minutes. Now that he had heard those dreaded words out loud. So much for rumor and paranoia, and now so much for hope. Now that it was said out loud, that somehow made it a fact. "To hell." The lawyer seemed to let the words sink in, then he nodded ever so slightly as if accepting his fate. "You have sown, my friend," Randall explained as Whitaker's shoulders sagged under the weight of it all. "Now it's time to reap. Just like in the good book." Again Whitaker nodded. He was clearly fighting the panic that was wanting to burst out from every pore of his being, but still he was winning that fight. Just